Building apps with lots and lots of complicated data doesn't have to be hard. I'm going to show you how to build a property finder app that has the potential to hold lots and lots of properties with information such as their photos, the property's location using a geolocation, the price, the description, and much more, as well as allow you to click on the property to see it fully. We're going to be organizing the data with GraphQL, so if you're new to GraphQL and want to get started, this is the perfect place for you. We're going to start off building out the data we need and even manage it thanks to this headless CMS tool, so that we can add data easily, edit it, and delete it as well. And not only that, we can add a whole bunch of apps to help us with our data from a whole library that will be accessible to us. Once this is done, we will then feed in all the data into a front end that we will be building together using Next.js. So Next.js, GraphQL, headless CMSs, these are all the things you're going to be practicing today in order to build out your very own property finder app. Okay, so here we are. We're going to first off on HiGraph. Just go ahead and click on the link in the video description. This is where I'm going to create my project. In other words, I'm going to create a schema that's going to hold all of our data in a nice organized way. So let's go ahead and do it. Please go ahead and sign up. I'm already signed up, so I'm just going to create a project. So we're going to scroll down here. Here's my previous projects, and I'm going to create a new project. It's going to be a blank project because I want to start completely from scratch. And I'm going to go ahead and let's call this Zillow project, just like that. And you can add a product description. I'm not going to, this is optional, but if you have a team, you might want to. And just go ahead and select a region. I'm going to select United Kingdom, and I'm going to add this project. And this is going to do all of its HiGraph wonderfulness for me. So here we are, there's this chart checklist. Of course, we're not going to use it because I'm here to walk you through everything right now, including this wonderful dashboard. We will go through these one by one, but we're going to go through them as we use them, which is, I think, a better way of learning anyway. So let's get to it. I'm going to first off create a schema, as we said, and our schema, well, we're going to keep it really simple. We're going to have a property object, essentially, that's going to hold a bunch of stuff like the title of our property or the name, the description of the property, the images, the location, including the latitude and longitude, and so on. So let's go ahead and do it. Under models, I'm just going to add a new one. I'm going to call this property, just like so, and add the model. It's really that easy. And now we have a bunch of helpers to our right, which is going to be all the fields that we can have. There's loads. The first one, let's start off simple and just add a single line text. And this is going to be the name of the property. You can do it like that because essentially it's just the API ID that matters, which has been auto-generated for me. We can make this unique, you can make it required. You can do all these things, okay, which might make it easier for team members when they add information, you know, or get like a little error message saying this is required and so on. But I'm going to keep this as it is and just add it. So that is a super basic field. It's just a single line text. The next one I'm going to do is a description. So once again, just add a description and make sure to name it correctly, description. Again, I'm just going to keep everything generic for now and add it. So that's two field types that we have done. Let's do another one. So I'm going to add a slug, which is just essentially a simple way to get to a specific property as we build out our project. So for example, if you have a dashboard full of properties and you click on one, it will take you to a unique URL where you can see that property and its wonderfulness along with way more information about it. And for that, we're going to use a slug. So let's call this a slug. You can have a description. I am going to choose to auto-generate the slug. And in order to do that, I'm going to use a field that exists. So I'm going to go ahead and generate slug from template. We are going to use name, so in the name field. So you just get your curly braces and type name, or you can select it like so, and it will bring up the name. So just make sure that's selected. So we already have lowercase selected, which means the slug will be converted into lowercase characters, but we'll see that in action when the time comes to it. Okay, so that's all I'm going to do. Under validation, you can also have a custom error message if you wish. That is something you can do if you want. So make sure slug fits correct format is something you can add if you want. And I'm just going to click add. Great. So those are fairly simple ones. The next thing I'm going to do is add a location. And for that, however, the location is going to hold two things like a longitude and latitude. And in order to do that, so in order to kind of nest an object within an object, we're going to create a component. So if you go ahead and add component here. I'm going to call this geolocation and add component. We can then add the fields in here, and that will be stuck to the geolocation. So let's go down and choose a float. I'm going to call this latitude, and go ahead and click add. And once again, let's create another one. So once again, I'm going to select float, and this time longitude is what I'm going to write, and hit add. So very simple. We've just created a component which is called geolocation, which holds a latitude and a longitude, which means that now on the property model, I can scroll all the way down here and select the component. It's just a basic component. I'm going to call this something different so we don't get confused. I'm just going to call this location. And I'm going to select the component that we want to link to this, which is the geolocation component. And I'm going to add it. So there we go. Our property model now has a location in it, which within it has the longitude and latitude. Next, we're going to have the image. And for this, we're going to scroll up. We're going to have the asset picker. Let's call this images, as it's going to be plural, because I'm going to allow for multiple assets. And I'm just going to select add. So now we have a way of essentially adding multiple images to the property when we get to adding the data. Great. We can also do something like have booleans. So if we scroll up here and find boolean, we can be like, oh, does it have a pool? So I'm just going to have pool here. This one's very simple. We're just going to add a bunch of booleans, so yes, no values. We can also have something like, is it pet friendly, for example? So we'll have pet friendly. Once again, all of these are things that you can choose as well. However, I'm just going to go ahead and continue. We can have something like in-unit dryer, for example. Okay, so let's have in-unit dryer. Does that exist? Let's add, and that is now a boolean. And then we're also going to have elevator. I'm just going to add a bunch. Maybe let's have one more, such as parking. So parking, just like that. So we have 5 booleans, I think, now attached to our model. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is looking great. We, of course, also need a price. So let's make this a float. So let's make this rental price, where people can add a price that they want to rent at, which is a float, which means it has, you know, the little dot after it. Okay. And then we're also going to add the amount of beds. So for this, we need a number. So I'm just going to choose beds like so and go ahead and add. Great. And we're going to have one more component. This is going to be for the broker. So once again, on components, I'm going to add a component. Okay. And there we go. And this time, I'm just going to give the name of the brokerage. So go ahead and add name as single line text. And we're also going to have a phone number. So for this, I need an integer. And let's just go with phone number, just like so. And I'm going to add that. Wonderful. So those are 2 things that exist on the broker component. So now you should know how to do this. Back on the property model, what do we need to get? Well, we're going to scroll down and just get a basic component. So here we go, basic for single components. Let's call this managing broker, for example. And then we select the component we want to link this to, and that is just the broker component that I made. And add it. So wonderful, that's it. We've created this schema. How easy was that? Now let's get to actually adding data to this. So in order to do that, I'm going to just select on content. And there we go. So now I can add an entry, and ta-da, we get the property model. So we can put in a name. So for example, I have already done this. So I'm just going to use data that I have previously collected. We can put something like duplex in Dubai. So you will see this like has been auto-generated for me. It's all in lowercase because that is something that we selected and is generated from the name field because we also specifically asked HiGraph to do that. Great. So great, now we also have a description. So here we go, I've just pasted in here, and the location, well, we know this is made up of 2 things. So as you'll see, the component is kind of like a nested object in here, and we're going to put the latitude in. So I'm going to put the latitude, once again, I picked this up previously, and the longitude as floats. And then we're going to add some images, which once again, I have previously picked out. So I'm going to upload them. I'm going to browse my downloads essentially, and I'm just going to get some images from here. Let's go with downtown 1 and 2. So great, I'm just going to put those in there and upload these 2. And then that's it. We have a few more things to fill out. So here are my Booleans. I'm just going to essentially, just select all of them for now. And let's put in a rental price, which I have totally made up. It's a float, so I can add the dot here. And let's make it 3 beds. And we're going to add a broker. So once again, the component is kind of like a nested object. Let's go with divine brokers. I've totally made those up. They don't exist. And I've also totally made up this phone number, so don't try call it. Great, and now we can save and publish. And of course, we have to publish the images separately and click Save and Publish here. Great. So wonderful. If we go back now, we will see that one property show up here. Let's just quickly go ahead and create 5 more. Of course, I'm speeding through this because I already have all my data. But if you need to pause here, if you just want to watch as I add 5 while you just add 1, that's totally fine. You don't need to add all 5 or 6 essentially. That is just what I'm going to do in order to make this project look nice. Okay, now let's add some more. So once again, please take your time here. Like, it's totally up to you what speed you want to take this at. Or if you've done one and you want to fast forward, that is totally fine. I'm just doing this so, everyone can see what I'm doing. So once again, put in the name. The slug has been auto-generated for me from the name because we did that. And then the description I have put in here. The geolocation, once again, this is a component, so it kind of looks like a nested object, if you will. We're going to put in the latitude, which is a float, and we're also going to put in the longitude. We're also going to add some images. So once again, I'm just going to upload these from my computer. I've already picked them out. I'm just going to upload these too. So just do like so. Great. And now what I'm going to do is just select some of these. We can go true, false, true, true, true. Let's put in a rental price. I'm going to put 6,000 in here. Let's put 2 beds and let's add a managing broker. I'm going to put star brokers again. I'm totally making this up. Okay, there we go. And we're going to save and publish and select all the images and save and publish. Cool. 2 down, 4 to go. So once again, let's just go back here so we can see them. They are all looking beautiful. And then I'm going to essentially add the 3rd property. This is going to be a Jumeirah apartment. If you've been to Dubai, some of these places might be starting to sound familiar to you. And then let's also add a geolocation. So these locations are really important because I'm going to show you how to map all of these onto one map. So you have loads and loads of, little, or 6 to be precise, little icons showing you where you can find these properties based on their longitude and latitude. Great, so now I'm just uploading 2 images. You can upload as many as you wish for tutorial purposes. I'm just going to select 2, and once again, I'm just going to select these kind of randomly. Let's put in a random price. Let's put in some beds. Let's now go with delightful brokers. Again, I am making those up. Okay, and save and publish. I'm going to select all and done. Great. Okay, so now let's add one more. Burj Khalifa views flat. And then we're going to add the description once more, add a geolocation. So I'm going to once again put in the latitude and put in the longitude. These are going to be like relatively close together, of course, because they're all going to be in Dubai. Let's upload some images. This time I'm going to go downtown and upload images 3 and 4. I've really kind of gone to town with these images. They are taken from the internet, okay? This is just for demo purposes. Again, of course, I don't go out and take my own images of flats either, and I don't own any of these flats. So yeah, just for tutorial purposes, everyone. And let's add a managing broker. I'm going to go with great brokers. Okay, and then let's put in a fake phone number once more. So there we go. And I'm going to save and publish. And once again, select those images and save and publish. So this is now looking great. I'm happy with this. Let's add just 2 more. So now we're going to get the address Dubai. That slug has been generated for me. As we know, hopefully this is like muscle memory now. Put in the description, put in the geolocation. So we're going to again put the latitude and longitude so we can map this out on a map later on. Let's also add some images. So I'm going to go with downtown 5 and 6 this time. So just like so, and upload those 2 images like that. Great. So this is exciting, and once again, you know the drill. Let's just select some of these. So just go through that. Let's put in a rental price. Let's put in the amount of beds and a managing broker. Let's go with happy brokerage. And then let's put in a number, which is not real. Please do not call it. I don't know who you might get through to, and they might be very surprised. Okay, so one more to go, and then we can actually start using this data to build out our front end. So let's do it all together now. Let's put in the name. So flat in downtown, that has been auto-generated for me. Let's put in the description. Let's of course put in the geolocation, which includes the latitude and the longitude. And let's add some photos. This time I'm going to do downtown 7 and 8. So let's upload those two files. And of course, we're going to just add some Boolean values. So this time, let's just make them all true, and then put the rental price, which I'm going to go with this much. Let's put 2 beds and add a managing broker, which I'm going to go with Poly Brokers. And again, just put in a random phone number and save and publish, and we are done. This is going to look wonderful because our data is going to look wonderful, and yeah, I'm really excited with this, how this is going to look. So there we go, we have our 6 properties. Now let's get to using this to build a front-end app. Let's do it. I'm going to go ahead and use WebStorm for this, so please go ahead and use whatever code editor you wish. With WebStorm, it's quite good because if I go ahead and select new project, I can then select Next.js, and it gives me the command we need, which is here. And then I can call this, let's call this Zillow clone. Okay, you can add TypeScript. I'm not going to, and I'm going to just click create. And this is going to spin up my project along with all the files. So let's just go ahead and go through this. Would you like to use TypeScript? No. ESLint? Yes. Tailwind CSS? No. Would you like to use source directory? Yes. Would you like to use app router? Yes. Would you like to customize the default import alias? No. And that's going to do its thing. Of course, if you aren't using WebStorm, you can just get up your terminal like this, go into a directory you like to work in. So for example, I could put WebStorm projects and then do that command again, which is npx create next app, making sure there's a space there and a space for whatever you want to call your project, which is Zillow clone in this situation. But of course, I'm not going to do it this way. So I'm going to get rid of that because I'm doing it this way, but that option is there if you need it. So this is now done. And you'll see all the files and configuration that has been spun up for me. This is great. I'm really happy with this. And along with all the dependencies and their versions. So if you're watching this in the future and something doesn't work, I always say, change it back to these versions, okay? All you have to do is just change it like so and run npm I to reinstall those packages. Yeah, keep that in mind for actually every tutorial you watch. So that is the package JSON file. This is looking good for now. We can start it by using this command dev. So for example, let's just get rid of this. I'm going to get up my terminal again. Making sure you're in the Zillow clone project, just do npm run dev, and that will spin up your project on localhost 3000. So there we go. This is what it looks like now. I'm just going to inspect this because I essentially want to start from scratch. So I'm going to get rid of everything. Yep. So let's get rid of that for now. And under sources, well, we don't need the favicon, so I'm going to delete that. Yes, we don't need module CSS because I'm just going to have one CSS file, so delete anyway. Global CSS is going to be fine, but I'm going to delete everything from here. So goodbye. And then layout. We're not going to import the font, so I'm going to get rid of that. Let's keep the import for global CSS. Let's get rid of that because that's to do with fonts. Let's change this to Zillow clone, and then let's put a demo app. Okay, and then here, well, yeah, this is right, but we don't have this class anymore. So just keep this like that. And then you can have it like this, or, you know, I like to have functional expressions, which is why I'm going to choose to write this like that, and then do export default root layout. Okay, let's just minimize this for now. So that is the content of my layout.js page. Pause if you need. This is my global CSS. There's nothing in here. And the last one, which is page.js, well, I'm just going to delete everything from here pretty much and just return. Let's delete that. For now, just an empty element like so. And once again, let's change this. I'm going to change this to const just because I prefer working with function expressions. And then we could do export default home. So once again, the only things you should have in your app directory are this page.js file, this layout.js file with this content. Just get rid of that as well. And the global CSS, which is nothing in it. Cool. So that's it. Now I'm going to create some components because, of course, we need the web page to look a certain way. So let's create a directory called components. Okay. And in here, well, we're going to create some components. So we're going to have a nav bar. It's a JS file. You can write JS extension or, because you select a JavaScript file, you don't need to. That will be added. So the JS is added here. I'm going to do const nav bar. That's right. And we're going to return an empty element. And then we're just going to do export default navbar. So we've created one component. You can go ahead and write navbar here, just, if you're confused about what's showing up or not. And now if I go ahead and get this component, we should probably just call it the same as here, just for consistency. So the navbar, I'm now going to go onto the page here, and I'm going to do import navbar from, and then let's do components. We're going into the components directory and we're getting the navbar. So now if I actually get that component here, so navbar, and save it and go back here, ta-da, it shows up. So once again, my elements, here's the body, and then obviously there's a bunch of stuff here, but what's important is that navbar shows up. This is because at the moment in my home page, we just have this element, which is just returning that text. Cool. Let's create some more components, but I'm actually going to copy all of this to make our lives easier. We're also going to create a search bar. So add that and paste that in here, and then I'm just going to change the text. I'm not using any shortcuts, so you can see exactly what I am changing. Search bar, maybe we don't need to do this anymore. I think you get the idea. Okay, so now let's create another one. We have the nav bar, we have the search bar. What else do we need? I'm just going to create a JavaScript file for this. Well, we need the card, which we're going to map out all our essentially properties to. So once again, I'm just going to put card, export default card. We're also going to have a map component, so JavaScript file map. And this essentially is going to hold our map. You guessed it. So const map, export default map. And one more, which is actually an image card, which is different to the card. So image card, add, and once again, I'm just going to put image card and then have image card. So there we go. That is all our components. Let's work on the navbar first, however. So we have our navbar. Right below it, I also know already that I'm going to put my search bar. So let's put this on a new line like so. And I can essentially import it, but the code editor's already done that for me. It's however you wish. You can choose to write it like that or like this. That is up to you. So I'm just going to minimize that so you can see more of what is going on. So at the moment, obviously, this doesn't look super exciting. I think let's style the navbar because it's going to be relatively easy. So if I just go ahead and find it here, so navbar. In here, well, I'm actually just going to put the Zillow logo, okay? So that essentially is going to be a whole SVG that I have picked out already, okay? So just for us, Zillow logo is going to go here for semantic meaning. Let's just change this to a nav element. And then the SVG is this. Please do take it from my code or comment in the comments and I can paste out this long SVG. Don't go try and make it yourself because if you save this, I mean, that's pretty complicated. It looks like that, which is crazy, right? So that's what that SVG essentially is. And now let's just style this up a little bit. So again, this is going to be very basic. Before you do anything though, I'm going to say that everything in my app is going to have a certain font. So font family, I'm going to go with sans serif. Let's also go text decoration none, right? We don't want any underlining or anything like that. I'm also just going to go ahead and grab the whole body element and just override the margin to be 0 and the padding to be 0 so we can start fresh. I'm going to take up the space of the whole app, so viewport height. The width is going to be 100 viewport width. And then we're going to do overflow hidden, which is actually going to help us scroll where we need to when we have loads of properties. So make sure to add that too. And now let's actually pick out the nav element that we just made. So great, I'm actually going to hard code the height of this to be 80 pixels. I'm also going to use display flex to initiate flexbox. I'm going to justify content and make sure that the logo is in the center, and make sure it's in the center from top to bottom as well. This won't work without adding a height, which we have. And I'm also going to just add a border to the bottom only, which is going to be a light gray that I've already picked out earlier. It's going to be solid and it's also going to be 1 pixel. So cool. That is looking good. I'm happy with that. So now that we have our nav bar, let's maybe work on the search bar next, right? So nav bar we're done with, the search bar coming up. So let's actually get up our search bar component. Here we go. I'm just going to make it bigger. And the search bar essentially is where we're going to do our searches, right? Let's maybe return back a div. And this is essentially, let's just maybe give it the class name of search bar. This is just going to hold an input element. So input element like so. Let's also have a placeholder, so some placeholder text. This is going to say search location. And then let's also have just a button, right? This is where we're going to have a button and an input. So button, and the button is going to say search. Cool. So that's all that I'm going to do. It's going to look like this, but of course we're going to style it up. So let's go back here. Maybe let's pick out the search bar. So this whole element. So let's do that. Let's also give it a height. So height, I'm going to go with 50 pixels. I'm going to again initialize flexbox. I'm going to this time do justify content flex start. So it's on the left hand side as things stand, and I'm going to align items center so that it's center from top to bottom. This won't work without the height. And again, I'm just going to add a border bottom. I think let's just make it, yeah, let's make it the same. So just like so. Now what I'm going to do is grab the input that lives inside the search bar. So the input that lives inside the search bar, an element of the class of search bar, so make sure there's a space there. And this input, well, I'm just going to give it a margin left of 20 pixels. Let's also give it a border. I'm just going to choose the same gray and just the same kind of styling. So there we go. And then I'm also going to add a border radius. So border radius, maybe let's do 5 pixels. Let's hard code a width for it. So width 300 pixels. Let's pad it out by 8 pixels. And let's give it a margin from top and bottom 10 pixels and left and right 5 pixels. So great. This will of course override this. So we can just do, this is top, this is right, this is bottom, this is left, which means that we don't need this essentially. And great, that's looking like so. So this is good, and let's just do the button next. So once again, we can be very specific and say it's the button that lives inside the search bar. That is up to you. I don't know if you plan on adding any more buttons. I'm not, but you never know. So great, let's do background color, RGB. This is the blue from Zillow actually. So 255. And then the color of the text for the button, which is going to be white, and Q tab 9. Let's get rid of the border. So just like so. And now I'm going to do border radius 5 pixels as well. Make sure that has a semicolon. And then the font weight is going to be bold. Let's put the padding as 8 pixels and a margin of 10 pixels 5 pixels left and right. So now this just looks a lot better. I feel I'm really enjoying how this is looking. Let's move on. So we've done the search bar. Next, let's move on, and I'm going to essentially create a main element. Okay, so obviously this will have semantic meaning. This is just kind of like where the main meat of the website is going to go. And we're going to have 2 articles. So one article, it's going to be for the map, and the second one is essentially going to be for all our cards, right, which we're going to map properties onto. So maybe let's go ahead and class name, give this the class name of listings. And in this article, like we said, we want the map element. So maybe let's import that, import map from components map. Thank you very much. And listings here. Well, let's have the H2 element, because I think we should have an H1 maybe somewhere on the website, because this is kind of like less important. So let's maybe add that at the end. Rental listings. And then let's also have a div. And this actually is where we're going to put all our cards. So let's do class name card container, just like so. And in here, we're going to essentially map stuff onto cards, but we don't have anything to map onto yet. So let's just put one card. So import card from card components. Great. So I think maybe let's just style this up a tiny bit before actually getting our data next, the thing you've all been waiting for. So back in here, I'm just going to essentially this time pick out the whole main element, and I'm going to do display flex on it. So the 2 articles appear kind of next to each other. Then let's actually grab each article and make sure that each one has a width of 50 viewport width, so half the viewport. And then the article with the class name of listings, so dot, it means class name. If it's all together, it means that class name is on that element. Well, what do I want to do? I'm just actually going to add a box shadow to it. So let's make it transparent color, 60, 64, 67, and then 0.3 for the alpha. And then let's add the x-axis, y-axis, blur, and spread. Okay, so we don't need pixel here. Cool. In fact, we don't need that one either. So now let's also have the padding, 20 pixels, just like so. And now let's also pick out the card container, which is going to have a width of 100% of the parent. We have a height of 90%. This also initialized flexbox. We can do flex direction and make sure all the cards are in a row. And then they also wrap over each other. So flex, wrap, wrap. Let's also center everything. So justify content center, I want to do. And let's make sure that if there's loads of properties that don't fit in the space on the y-axis, I'm going to allow us to scroll. So cool. At the moment, it's just looking like this. Okay, not very exciting. Our map's going to go here, and all our rental listings are going to go here. So let's get that data. So let's go back to the page and let's do it. So first off, I'm just going to go up here, and I'm actually going to write a function. This is going to be an async function. So const get properties, just like so. And like I said, this has to be async. So I'm going to use the async keyword there. And in here, what I'm going to do is essentially set up a highgraph endpoint. So const highgraph end points. And I'm going to do process env, and then whatever you want to call it, I'm just going to call it the same, highgraph endpoint, and we're going to store that in our .env file. So let's go ahead and create a .env file. I'm just going to put this in the same level as, the package JSON. So let's add a new file. It's going to be a .env file, like I said. So here we go. Let's add that. And then I'm going to essentially do a highgraph endpoint like so. And here essentially is where we're going to put our endpoint. So let's go back to here. Let's go project settings. And then let's go to endpoints like so. And then I'm just going to get the content API. Let's go for the high performance content API. So copy that one. And now we're just going to paste it like that. Great. So there we go. I've just pasted it. So wonderful. Another thing you're going to have to do is just add permissions. So just click add permissions here, and we're just going to choose the read rule because we just want to read the data. We don't want to do anything else. So I'm just going to add that. Okay, so that permission has been set, and I will now be able to read data from my project. So let's go back here now and let's go back to WebStorm. So we've got that here. We of course need to be able to read anything from the .env file. In order to do that, let's just get up our terminal. I'm just going to make another tab and I'm going to do npm-i.env, which is a package essentially, which will allow us to read anything from the env file. Okay, so that has now been installed. Wonderful. So great, using process env, we can read anything that lives in the .env file. We're getting the HiGraph endpoint. And once we have that endpoint and I've saved it under the const HiGraph endpoint, I'm going to essentially do if HiGraph endpoint doesn't exist, let's just throw an error. So throw new error, HiGraph endpoint is not set. Okay, otherwise let's get that data, right? So const response await fetch HiGraph endpoint, and then we're just going to pass through some stuff. We're going to pass through the method because this is a post method, and we're also going to have to pass through headers. So maybe let's just get rid of that. And the headers that we're going to pass through is just going to be content type, so content type application JSON. Great. We'll also, there we go, just to get rid of that, going to pass through the body. I'm going to do JSON stringify, and we're going to stringify the query that we have to send. So in order to get all of the properties essentially, let's just go back to here. We can actually use our API playground in order to create a GraphQL query. So in order to get all our properties, okay, maybe let's just go ahead and delete that. We can, so we want to get properties, right? So query here, and if we select the properties model, you will see we are going into the properties model and we can actually select everything we want for it. So we want the amount of beds, we also want the description, we want whether there's an elevator, we want the images, right? So from the images, we really just want the file name, but we also want the URL. So let's find that URL like so. So we're literally just building out a query, right? Thanks to this helper. Under location, we also want the longitude and latitude. The managing broker, we're going to get the name of them and the phone number. We of course want the name of the property. We want whether there's parking, pet-friendly, pool as well. We want the rental price. We want the slug. And I think that is it for all the properties. We can also have the ID of the property. That is something that you can choose. So maybe let's add that. So now that I've built out my whole query, I can run it. Okay? So great, and this gives me back all the data. It's a bunch of stuff. This is essentially the data that we want to bring back into our app. So what I'm going to do is just copy all of this and paste it. Now this is if I wanted all the information for the property, right? But for the dashboard, we probably don't need everything. I will take the longitude and latitude. However, the managing broker, I think we'll save that for, you know, when we get the actual property coming back itself. So let's get rid of managing broker. Let's maybe also get rid of the Booleans. So I could just do it from here. So these are all the Booleans. Let's get rid of that. Elevator is also a Boolean. We'll keep beds, description, images, location, name, rental price, slug, and ID. Okay, so of course you can also mess around with this. For now, however, just put some backticks, so not like quotation marks, some backticks like so, and then just paste in that query. Okay, So great. I'm just going to tab this out so that it's a little bit more readable. Maybe rename the query too. So query properties, you can call it whatever you wish. And great. So that is it. And it finishes here. There's the semicolons for that. And then the next ones is for the whole piece of code. So once we get the response, we're going to save it as JSON, so await response JSON, and then we're just going to return out of this function the JSON data properties, because essentially we're going to go into this object, so dot data, and we're going to go again, so dot properties, in order to get back this array. Cool. So now we can use this function get properties, and I'm going to use it in here. So here, let's also make this an async function now. We're going to use the await keyword. I'm going to get properties, I'm going to call it, but this is an async function, so I'm going to stick await on here, and let's save it as properties. Okay, so let's check that has worked. All I'm going to do is console log properties. Great. So now let's go back to our Zillow clone, and then let's get up our terminal and shut this down. Ta-da! We are getting all of that data now in our server. So amazing. We got it here, and now we are getting it in our app too. Wonderful. So now that we have those properties, let's actually map them out onto the cards, right? So let's do it. All I'm going to do is get the properties, and I'm going to use map, and then I'm going to open this up. So let's wrap all of this like so, and map each property that exists in properties onto the card. Okay? But let's open up the card because there's a bunch of stuff we need to do. We, of course, need to give it a key, which is going to be the property ID, because that's something that we got the ID, okay, from each object. Once again, if you need to look at what's coming back to us exactly, it will be here. So there is one object, right, which defines a property, an ID, so .id, in order to get the ID. We're just working with what's coming back to us. So we have the key. We're also going to get the property name, which is going to be, of course, the property name, because that exists. We're also going to get the slug, which is the property slug. That's right, thanks tab 9. Next, we'll also have the rental price, which of course is the property rental price. We'll pass through the beds, which is the property beds, and we'll pass through just one image actually for now to the card. We're going to go into the property, into the images array, and just get the first one. Okay, pass through the whole thing, not just the URL. Great, so that's what we're passing through into the card. Now let's actually get that card. So let's go to the card here so we can map out everything onto it. So let's do it. Let's find that card. And now let's just get all the properties. So we have, oh great, the property name, the slug, the rental price, the beds, and the image. Thanks tab 9. That's wonderful. That's actually everything we need. And now what we're going to return is, well, we're actually going to wrap this in a link, right? Because if we click on the card, we want it to take us somewhere. And that is, you guessed it, the property itself. And for this, we're going to use the slug. So I'm going to go into the properties directory, or the property directory, which we are yet to make, and just pass through the slug, okay? And I'm going to show you how to write this in Next.js now. First, let's just import the link. So import link from next link is something we're going to do. And now here in the directory of app, so not in the components, we're going to stick to here. I'm going to essentially make a property, so new directory called property, just like we saw written here. So property, make sure that's spelled exactly the same. And then in here, we're going to essentially create a new directory. And this is going to be slug written like that. So in between two square brackets. And now we're going to create another file. And this file is going to be the page.js. Okay, so we're going to add that like so. So now in order to get to this page, that is the code to do it. Okay, make sure that's written in backticks like so. So let's check if it works. For now, I'm just going to have some text. Maybe let's just create a div and let's just put the property name, okay, just to check everything is working. And then on here, on this page, let's just do const property individual, so property return div I am a property export default property. So now let's go back here, so refresh. So great, it's been mapped out. There we go, let's hit on the first one. And ta-da, it does take us to property directory and then the slug, okay? Oh, the slug is here and it takes us to a page that says I am property. Of course, this information will be specific to the duplex in downtown, but for now that works. I'm happy with it. Let's go back. So I'm just gonna get rid of that for now. Let's get rid of this and let's continue. So cool, let's go back to actually building out this card. So maybe let's get rid of that for now. I'm going to have the div with the class name of card. Here, I'm actually going to use the image card. So maybe let's put image card like so. For now, let's import it here. Import image card from components image card. Even though we are in the components directory, so maybe we just need to do, yep, that's right, image card. Sometimes I get tripped up by the suggestions. And when we have our image card, I'm actually going to create a div, and this is going to have the class name of text container, so we can style it up. And the text containers is going to be really simple. We're just going to have an H3 element that's going to hold our rental price in dollars. Let's do a month. Let's also do the beds. So beds as whatever comes back to us. And then let's put the text beds so it's obvious what we're talking about. Let's have a P element with the property name. And that's it. So at the moment, if I refresh, this is what it looks like. Of course, we need to style it up though. So let's go back in here. And after the card container, let's actually style up the card. So the card, well, let's change the background color. I'm going to go with RGB and make it white. Let's also add a border radius, which is going to be 5 pixels. I'm going to go with overflow hidden. Let's also add box shadow. I'm going to go with RGBA. Let's make it black and then 0.24, 0 x-axis, y-axis, and then blur. We don't need the px after 0. Let's also set the width to 300 pixels. The height is going to be 235 pixels and margin is going to be 15 pixels. Okay, so that's the card, and I'm going to grab the card and get its text container like so, and just put padding of 5 pixels. Okay, and lastly, but not leastly, for the card, I'm going to get the H1, H2, H3, and P elements, and then I'm going to do margin 1 pixel, padding 1 pixel, color RGB 000, so make it black. Cool. So great, that's what it currently looks like. Of course, If we make this a little bit smaller, I'm just going to zoom out. That's what it would look like on a normal browser. So amazing. They're kind of wrapping over each other. Now let's work on the image. So once again, I'm just going to go back here, go back to the card, and now the image card. Well, we're going to pass through a few things into the image card. We're going to pass through the URL. That's going to be the image URL. Then we're going to also have the file name, which is the image file name, the width. I'm just going to hard code this as 300, and the height, which is going to be, I'm going to make it 150. Okay, so that's what we're passing through into the image card. So now let's go to the image card. Here it is. Let's make it bigger. And once again, let's just get the URL, the file name, the width, and the height. And we're just going to return an image. However, we're going to import that image from Next. So import image from next image. And now let's just return it. So I'm going to make an image. Let's make that a self-closing element. And now we're going to have the class name. So I'm going to add a class name to this of image. We'll have the source of this as the URL, the alt. So just, you know, the name that shows up, an image doesn't show up, it's just going to be the file name. And then we'll have a width, which we've passed through, a height, which we've also passed through. And let's make this priority. Cool. So we just need to do something in the Next.js config file. So let's go back here. So Next.js config. Let's make this a bit bigger. And images. We're going to add a few things. We'll add dangerously allow CSV true. And then we're going to add remote patterns, which is going to be an array. And this is going to hold a bunch of objects that essentially look like this. So there's one object. I'm just going to add a few of these just to be sure. So let's add that one. Let's also add this graph one. And let's also add this one, okay? And if you choose to like deploy this to Vercel, I'm just gonna add that, or work with Netlify. I'm just gonna go ahead and add another one too. So great, we've just done that. Of course, this code will be available to you afterwards as well, so just keep that in mind. And our images are now loading. This is looking so cool. I'm really happy with that. And of course, let's click into one. So now let's work on this page. We're nearly done. We'll just do this. And then we're going to essentially do the map, which is really exciting. So again, let's work on this page right here. I'm just going to get rid of that for now. And this time we're going to have to do another call to HiGraph. First up, however, I'm just going to actually get the image card in here again. So import image card from image cards. However, it lives in components. So let's go to components image cards. And we're going to import link from next link. And here we're again going to write a function. So const get individual properties. So just like so. And this is an async function. Once again, we're going to check if the HiGraph endpoint exists, but let's first define it. So process env HiGraph endpoint. So if no HiGraph endpoint, we're just going to throw error HiGraph endpoint is not set. And then also now we can actually do const response await HiGraph endpoint. The method is going to be post, the headers are going to be content type, and then thanks tab 9, you've already added a query. That's pretty cool. Let's see if it's right? So query, maybe let's name it. So property, to get one property. However, we are going to have to pass through a slug in here. So as the variables, I'm just going to go down here. Variables, we're going to pass through the variable of slug, and it's just going to be the slug. So we're going to pass that through later. We're going to get it from the parameters. So we're going to pass through that slug into here, which means in here we can get it. So let's pass it through into the query. So slug, let's define it as a string. And then here, slug, it's going to be the slug. So again, we're passing it through. And this actually is not correct. So let's actually get rid of it. And just let's go back to our playground, right? I think that's much easier. So let's get rid of all of this. Let's write a query. This is going to be the query property, right? And to get just one property, so let's go into the property where, and then let's hard code the slug. So slug, what was it? What's the one that we're working on now? Duplex in Dubai. Let's try get duplex in Dubai. So let's get that one. And then what do we want from it? Well, we want its ID. We want its name. We want its description. So I'm going to pass that through also. We also want its rental price. Let's also get if it has a private parking or just parking. It has a pool. Is it pet friendly? Let's also get in unit dryer, elevator, the amount of beds, and then the images. And we're going to get all the images by the ID, their URL, and their file name. Okay? So great. I think that's all we want. Let's also get the managing broker. So managing broker, and we'll get the name of the broker, and we'll also get the phone number. So that's it. Let's see if it works. Let's run this. And great, this should just come back with one object, and it does. It comes back with one object to represent the duplex in downtown. So I'm happy with this. So let's maybe copy all of this now, and we can paste it in as the query. Of course, we're going to have to replace this once more. So yeah, we can do that, or we could just paste whatever's in between the properties. Maybe let's do that, that's better. So whatever's in between these curly braces, let's get all of that, just miss out the last two curly braces, and ta-da. So that's all I've done. So now we're of course passing through that slug into here. After that has kind of done its thing, so here, const data equals await response JSON, and then we're going to return out of this function the data property individual, okay, because that's what comes back to us, data property, and that's the object that we want. Great, so now let's use this function, right? So where is it? The get property function, and we're going to pass it through the slug into it. So that is something you have to do, slug, in order so we can use it in this function. So now here, I'm going to get property, pass it through the slug. However, we're going to get this from the params, okay? So we can get the params of this page by doing this. And now I can do params slug to pass the slug into the function in order to get back all the data about it. There's an async function, so we need the await keyword here, which also means we need the async keyword here. And then let's get the response of this and save it as property. And of course, let's just console log this out maybe for now, console log property. Maybe let's get rid of this console log. And on the home page, I'm also going to get rid of this console log, so it's a lot more clear to us what is going on. And then that is being passed through into the function, and then it's being passed through here. Whoops, we need to do that. So let's just check this one more time. Query property, passing through the slug as a string. Property, this should be property, sorry, as we saw, my bad. We probably should have just copied exactly what we saw. And then this should be where slug is slug. Make sure that this does not have that here. And now let's console log the property. And then look at the terminal. Amazing. We're getting back that one property, just the one property. So now let's map it out. So once again, this is the whole query. Make sure to pause here if you're having issues, or, you know, like I said, just test it out here once more like that. And then if you're happy with it and it's getting the response, just copy the whole thing and then change this so it's the slug that you're passing through into the query, which is also passed through as a variable that was appended here. Okay, so once again, this is it. I'll go through that slowly, pause if you need. Great. So now, like I said, let's map that property, right? So let's do it. So what are we going to return? Well, for now, we're returning a div. Let's give this the class name of property. Let's create another div. This time, let's give this the class name of property images container. And then let's get the property. And first, let's get the images and map each image onto an image card. And of course, this is reusable. So yeah, we got the key, we got the URL, we got the file name, and then we're going to pass through the width, which I'm going to hard code as 2000, and the height, which I'm going to go as 550. So great, we're going to map all those out onto an image card. Next, we're going to create another div. This time, I'm going to give this the class name of property info container. Let's give this an H1. I'm going to go ahead and put the property name in here. We're then going to get the H2 element. I'm going to use a span to add the property beds amount, followed by the word beds. And let's also add another span to add the rental price. So span, and then I'm going to do dollars rental price. Obviously, that's attached to the property itself. And then I'm going to have a break. Let's also add the H2 element, and it's going to say overview. Let's have the P element, and I'm going to add the property description. Let's add another break. I'm going to have the H2 amenities. And then for this, I'm going to have an unordered list. So UL. And if property parking exists, I'm going to show the word that private parking. I'm just going to show the words private parking, right, as a list. So if that exists, parking, show that. If property pool exists, we're going to show pool, and so on. If property pet friendly, we're going to put pet friendly. If property in-unit dryer, show in-unit dryer. If property elevator, show elevator. So I think that's 5. That is looking good. And finally, let's just have a break. And I'm going to add the H3 element of licensed brokerage. We'll have a P element here of managing broker, and we'll put the property managing broker name. And then we'll also have the phone number, which is going to be the property managing broker phone number. Great. And then we'll also have a button to go back. So all I'm going to do for this is put another break and then have a button that says go back. And then let's just wrap it in a link. I'm just going to get all of that and put href and just make it go back to essentially the home page. Cool. So at the moment, We've got a little error. Where is that? We've got a little error here. Let's save this. Wonderful. So this is looking okay. Let's just do a little bit more styling first. So let's go back to global CSS. And this time, let's get the actual property itself, so the whole page. And I'm just going to add some margin. So let's do 50 pixels and then 100 pixels on the left and right. Border radius, I'm going to round it off with 20 pixels. I'm going to add a box shadow, which is going to be RGBA 0000.24. 0 x-axis 3 pixels, y-axis 8 pixels blur, and then overflow I'm going to put hidden display flex. Okay, and now the image, so each image I'm going to just make sure that it's 100% of the container. I'm also going to get the property image container. Let's just give it a width of 70%. And then I'm also going to get the property info container. Make it 30%. Let's give it a padding of 30 pixels. Okay, so we've done that. And then finally, we just need the info container spans as well. I want to style those. So let's get each span. And this is the last thing we're going to style. So border is going to be solid 1 pixel RGB, that gray that we like to use, 199, 199, 199. And then the border radius 5 pixels. Let's do padding. Padding is going to be 4 pixels on the top and bottom and 10 pixels on the left and right. And then let's also add margin of 5 pixels and 0 on the left and right. So this is looking so much better. Of course, we do want to kind of scroll on this, so maybe we have to get rid of the overflow hidden and maybe on the body itself for now. Okay, so that is looking so much better. Of course, you can be free to style this up however you wish. We also want to add the styling of the button to that. So let's actually give this button class, let's let it run free so that that styling can be applied to everything. So great, this is what the page looks like at the moment. And of course, we can go back. One other thing I want is actually for this to be next to that, so left and right. So I think we should have this div with the class name of property image container. Let's actually move this div. So let's grab everything in here. I think that should be it. I'm going to cut that and make sure that it's after this div. So just paste it in like so, and then those two are next to each other. That is just looking so much better. Great. So now this is it. There's 2 more things to do. I need to add the map and the search functionality. So let's do it. Okay, so now we're going to go to the map. So here is the map. And this is essentially going to be code from the Google Maps documentation, okay? So this time we're going to use client, so make sure to use client here in Next.js so that this is treated kind of like, client component. And we can use stuff like import, use state, use effect from React. We're not going to use effect though, we're going to use callback, and we're going to do use, or just memo even. Okay, we're also going to have to import Google Map as well as use JS API loader and marker from React Google Maps API. So of course we're going to have to install this. So let's get up our terminal. I'm going to create a new tab and do npm I React Google Maps API. So that's going to do its thing, and let's continue. So of course we're going to have to pass through locations. However, before we do that, I'm just going to define our container style. So container style, just like so. I'm going to make sure that it's 100% width of our parent element. So just pass that through like so. And the height is going to be 90%. So make sure that is a string as well, 90%, and this is a comma. So that's our container style. We're also going to have to define the center of our map. So const center by longitude and latitude. And let's just do it by the first longitude and latitude of our properties, right? So lat is going to be something, and then long is going to be something. However, we're not going to have this. We're going to actually pass through the locations and get the first item and get its latitude. And same for this one. However, this time we're going to get the longitude. Okay, of all our locations that we're going to pass through into here, so locations. So just keep that in mind. As the image that we're going to use in order to show where all of our images are, I've again just taken this from the Google developer documentation. It's just an image of a beach flag. Okay, so if you want the whole URL, it's here. There we go. Or of course, please use the code that I will share with you. So that is it, like so. Great. Okay, so once you get that, either by copying it from here or the Google developer documentation or from my code, let's continue. Next, I'm going to define if the map is loaded. So const is loaded. I'm going to use the JS API loader, and I'm just going to pass through an ID for this. It's going to be the Google Maps script, and we're going to pass through our Google Maps API key. So great. You can do this, or because this is front end stuff, we can do it at next public, and I'm just going to do map API key, so just API. So now this means that in our .env file, just in here, we're going to put in the API key to our API key from Google, right? So this is mine. If you want to get yours, just head over to developers.google.com/maps, and then you can get your API key. So I've already, signed up and created an account, but essentially you just have to go in here and get yours. So under keys and credentials is where you'd find your API key. So there's mine, or you can create a new one. Okay, so great. You can edit it, you can delete it, you can create your own, and so on. So there you go. Hopefully that's self-explanatory. So once you have yours, let's just get rid of that. That's how you load it in. Now we're going to set the map. So const map set map use state null. We're going to write this code to essentially check the on load. So essentially we are checking the latitude and longitude bounds of the window. And then we're going to write some code to unmount. I'm literally just getting this from the Google documentation, by the way. I'm not writing this myself. Okay, and now we're going to return something. So we're going to return, well, let's get rid of this, is loaded, question mark. And if it is, we're going to do something here, okay? Otherwise, we're going to just return an empty element, okay? And what goes into the Google map? Well, on the first tag, we're just going to add the map container style and pass through the container style. We'll pass through the center, we'll pass through the zoom, we'll pass through the onload, and we'll pass through the onmount. And then, so after this is kind of done, we're going to actually get the locations. So each of the locations, which is just going to be our longitude and latitude. And we're going to map each location. We're also going to need an index for this because we don't have identifier. So index, make sure that spells locations. And we're going to map it onto each location onto a marker. So there is our marker. This can actually be a self-closing element. And we'll get the key, which is just going to be the index. We'll get the position, and we'll pass through the longitude and latitude of each location. And then as the icon, we're just going to pass through the image, which is, of course, defined up here. I'm not going to do the scaled size or the origin. I am going to do the anchor. We're just going to just do new window, Google Maps point 558. Okay, so save that. And of course, we need to put in our location. So back on the main page, we're going to have to essentially filter out all the locations from our properties. So when our properties come back here, we're of course getting a bunch of properties, an array of bunch of objects. But if we just want the locations from each one of those objects, so I'm going to define that locations, we're going to get the properties and maps, so get each property, and we're just going to return the property location, which is an array. And then once we have that, so this is now going to be an array of lots of arrays, we're going to pass that through into the map, just like so. Okay, so that's what's being passed through into the map up here. Use client should just be spelled like that. Ta-da! And finally, we just need to do one more thing. We're going to export default map, but wrap it in memo. Okay, and great. So some of my properties are a bit far out. Maybe we need to pick another one. So, you know, you can go ahead and pick any of them really. And maybe let's also change the zoom. But essentially it works. So I'm just going to change this to maybe location 4. You never know which one is going to work best. So yeah, I would definitely consider changing maybe the zoom point of these based on where your location is. But otherwise, this looks really good to me. I'm happy with this. Now let's work on the search. Now, in order to do the search capability, okay, you could stop here if you're happy with everything, or we're gonna have to do a little bit of reshifting. So let's just get rid of everything for now. And for this, just to make things easier, I'm just going to make a new component. And let's just call this grid. Okay, so we've got a grid.js. So const grid equals, and once again, we're just going to return something. And then we're going to export default grid. And this is going to be a client component. Okay, so I'm going to use client. Now this grid is essentially going to handle everything, so the search and the map and mapping out the locations in order so that we could perform a search essentially. So let's go ahead and do it. I'm just going to go ahead and once again import use state from React, just like so. I'm also going to import the card from components card, but we are in the components, so I could just go ahead and do card. And we're also going to import map from map. Okay, so in here this time we're going to put in all the properties. And then we're also going to essentially create our search bar in here instead. So here's our search bar usually, right? I'm just going to actually take all of this and stick it in the grid. So let's create an empty element, just like so. Again, this is just if you want to have search capabilities. If not, you could have just left the code as it is. Let's maybe get rid of the button. So yeah, we can have search location. However, on change of this, I'm going to do E, and then we're going to, instead of console log, we're going to set input and map locations. Let's just get rid of this for now. And the value of this is just going to be input. So now up here, let's do const set input and map locations. And whatever is here is just going to be a value. And we're going to set input as whatever the value is, but we're going to do a bunch of other stuff too. So after we set the input value, we're going to have to set the houses. Okay, and for that, we're going to get the properties, and that's right, filter each house, or we can say filter each property that exists. So we'll get each property's name. So property name, change it to lowercase. And if it includes the value that we are searching also to lowercase, just to be sure, then we filter it out. And in fact, maybe let's set this up here. So const input, set input, const houses, set houses, and start off with the properties, const locations, set locations, use state. And here we can actually use the houses to map each house and get the house location. Okay, so we don't need to do that anymore on the main page. We're doing it here. Next, we also do the same for locations. So we've just set the houses, right? So whatever properties are, so we've just reset them to be the latest properties that we have filtered out. So now locations, I could just pass through houses, map, and just have the houses, so each house's location be passed through. So now here, let's actually go back to the main page because we're going to have to get a bunch of stuff from here. So I'm actually just going to take out everything of this main. So everything here, let's just get all that, let's grab it and let's put it in the grid. So just after here, just like that. Great. And the only thing we need to now change is houses here from properties. Hit save, and back on this page again, let's get rid of the search bar as we don't need it anymore. I'm just going to get the grid, just like so, and pass through the properties as properties. We don't need to do this here anymore as we are doing that in the properties component. And back here, we don't need any of these anymore. We're going to just import grid from components grid. One other thing we need to do is actually just get rid of the search bar now. Let's delete this whole thing as we're doing it in the grid component as well. Wonderful. So now let's just go back to the map, right? Because we hard-coded 4 here, but just let's make that go back to 0. And you know, if that exists, this just means that we can now search for things. So I can search duplex, and it will show up along with the only map pins that are related to it. Great. So this is looking good. We probably want this to stretch all the way down, however, so just a few more things we need to do. Let's go back to the global CSS. Let's make the article be height 90 viewport height, or however big you really want it to be. So let's search for another one now. Let's search for perhaps Khalifa, and then this one shows up along with the only flag for that. This is looking great. I'm so happy with this. Just some final pieces of styling on the map. I'm just going to change this to be 100%. And then instead of using the bounds, I'm just going to do map set zoom and set the zoom here. Let's make it a 7. We probably don't have to have it here then. And this just means you can control the zoom a lot better. So that's all I need in there. And this just means now that if I go like this, we get the duplex and the little icon shows up for the duplex. And let's try another one. Let's do apartment. So 2 of them show up. That is looking good. And great, I'm happy with that. So great, we can now search for apartments. So here I am searching for 2 apartments. And of course I can click into one and get all the information about it. And go back as well. Okay, thanks so much for coding with me. I hope this was useful. This was so fun. Please do have any questions that you want, put them in the description. Please do ask me any questions using the comment section. And yeah, just let me know what other kind of tutorials you want from me. I really enjoy doing this, and I'd love to see what you build with this knowledge soon.